Hello and welcome to episode 87. It's going to be a two-in-one video, but the first bit of the video is really something that I thought I'd do to satisfy my own curiosity. Just last week we did a live show in a big theatre, and the visiting company were mainly doing sort of 50s, 60s, rock and roll, that sort of thing, hits from that sort of era, and in an attempt to be authentic, they were using those rather sort of famous designed Elvis microphones, the Shure 55, the 55SH. And I noticed in the sound check that they sounded different. And I was a bit surprised because in actual fact they sounded like a really modern microphone. And a bit of investigation revealed that these were the new Super version of the old 55, and that 55 design really does go back to sort of before Elvis, so it's a very old microphone, and it's been tweaked and messed about with a few times in terms of what's actually inside them, but essentially it's sort of come through the Shure lineup and it's still there because, you know, it's an iconic microphone. Now, I don't like them. I knew I'd got one somewhere, so I've managed to discover it and I've pulled it out, and I've probably had this thing for 20, 25 years, something like that. I think it was bought originally because of what it looked like when we were doing a video. And I think we wanted the Good Morning Vietnam style microphone, and that's what it was bought for. And I very sort of soon discovered that I just didn't like the sound of it. I thought they were a bit weedy, a bit thin sounding, sort of, I suppose probably 50s sounding would be quite accurate. I mean, they were, you know, they did the job in the 1950s and the 60s, and they weren't really that truthful. So I've got one here set up next door to the usual SM7B. So let's pop across to this 55 now and see what you think. So we're on the 55. And I'm using it at a distance. Now, probably worth noting that these microphones were never really designed to be used at this sort of distance. They were designed to sort of put up against your face and, you know, sing into, or use on the radio. So this is a bit of an unrealistic and perhaps a bit of an unfair test. But switching between the SM7B and the 55 shows the difference. So I figure what we should really do is now repeat this, but with me much closer. This one also being 25 years old, I think the foam is shot. One of the weirdnesses of the 55 is that it uses sort of almost like fabric feel, sort of pop sort of shield inside. It was almost like the stuff you see on snooker tables. It was a sort of fabric-y thing originally, and it used to fall apart. And so certainly for a long time now it's been foam, and you could buy re-foam kits. The current ones, I believe, are blue foam. Delving into the history a bit, it seems that Shure didn't really specify anything much about the foam inside these things. And one year you'd have sort of blue foam, the next year it'd be black. Apparently there were even red foam versions. I've never seen one of those, but they existed. I don't think it really means very much. But okay, next thing, let's move these a bit closer to me. So here we go, the SM7B and the 55 close in. Now, at this distance, we're still okay windshield wise. The 55, that foam inside is not very thick, and so if you pull the front off these things, it actually looks a little bit like the insides of a Shure SM58 in terms of the capsule design, and it just pokes out of a little mount on the inside, and so it's got one little bit of foam between it and the outside world, and that's the sort of difference that makes this the P's and the B's. The P's and the B's can be quite troublesome. Now, if I do the P's and the B's into the SM7B, the P's and the B's into the SM7B, that makes quite a big bit of difference. But of course, the SM7B has also got the big foam windshield on the outside. It's got some gaps on the inside so the air doesn't sort of wobble too much inside the microphone, and that's fairly effective. And on the 55, it's far more basic. The 55. What else don't I like about it? Oh, well, I personally don't like microphones that have switches on them. And a lot of people will have versions of the 55 that have the switch either linked out by a bodge that people have done themselves. It's, just basically 2 screws, take the switch out, put a little blanking plate over the top. Because the killer with these things is that the people who use them tend to put their hands on the mount. And when they put their hands on the mount, they knock the switch and switch them off. And so you'll get someone walk out on stage, grab hold of the microphone, try to use it and discover it's dead. And that's very common, and it's happened to me. So I personally would stick a bit of tape round. But of course, that doesn't look very nice. So a lot of people will short out the switch, make it permanently on, and then replace the little panel on there with a hole, with a blank. And Shure did one of those for a while that you could buy as a sort of a replacement. 2 screw holes in the same place, but no actual switch underneath. That's always useful to do. So there we go. That's a quick look at this version. I don't have the super version. They're quite expensive. I think they're around about 275 quid or that sort of region. So they're about £100 odd more than the original series that you can still buy. So the super one, there was a mega difference when I heard it. I mean, they stood there doing a sound check, going 1, 2, check, check, and it sounded just like a modern microphone. And the 55, as you buy this particular version, it's the 55 Mark II, I think, but the Mark I was a long time ago. But the 55 Mark II still has that slightly sort of thin sound. It's not horrible, but certainly if you're trying to recreate the sort of 50s sound, it's perhaps authentic, maybe. It's a shame, really, because most people will just immediately go to the EQ and put a bit of warmth back in them. I think that's what everybody will do, which apparently you don't have to do with the latest one because it sounds modern. Anyway, so that's the first bit of today's video.